Hi everyone, welcome to loadmagic.ai, putting the fun back into performance testing, one tool at a time. This one's about the book. I'm being interviewed by George, AI Performance Engineering. Enjoy.
All right, hi everyone, I'm George and welcome back to loadmagic.ai, putting the fun back into performance engineering. Let's have a look at what we have in store today.
What's the book about?
So what's it about? It's a practical guide to using AI. Not just theory, there's a bit of theory, but it's mostly based on practical experience building LoadMagic, which I built, I broke, and then fixed. Probably still fixing it now, actually. So yeah, I guess it's to do with using AI to address pain, in my case, performance engineering pain. So it covers decisions, hard numbers, wrong turns, quite a few of those, what not to do, and what I learned from those mistakes, and some things that did work, and there's a bit about sort of agentic orchestration and agentic workflows and how we can use those for performance engineering. So yeah, there's a lot about a little bit about the future as well, and kind of what's potentially to come with AI and performance engineering.
What's the problem you're solving?
So the problem we're solving, I guess my biggest problem as a performance engineer has always been in the preparation layer. I understand it's not the same for everyone, and there are pain points in different parts of the performance engineering workflow. But my sort of journey into using AI to solve that pain was, I guess, a sort of accidental thing. So yeah, there is quite a lot of heavy lifting, which often goes unrecognized in that sort of in my typical sort of engagement workflow as a performance testing or performance engineer. And yeah, so it was mainly trying to solve that problem in the preparation phase. Basically, we're getting user flows that are usually captured at a UI level, and we're translating those user flows into sort of network level replayable scripts using tools. So it can take on average about a day of grind, to turn one of those user flows into a replayable script with the tools. So a big part of that is a bit like looking for needles in a haystack. We're trying to correlate dynamic data, which is handled automatically by browsers, but not automatically with the tools that we're using to recreate that logic. So there's quite a lot of logic we're recreating. So yes, using AI seemed like a natural fit for that. Some of the choices I made probably not ideal for working with AI, like choice of tool and things. But yeah, it was, I guess, an accidental journey into solving some pain with AI in just a part of the performance engineering journey, initially with LoadMagic, but also and it's something I need to come back to in different parts of my work. I have used AI as well to solve some of the other the other parts of the journey, so more the analysis end as well. That's for the next book though. I'm working on that one, and also I realized this first book was more sort of conceptual, and I guess even in some places a little bit philosophical. So yeah, I think for the more sort of practical, detailed, step by step, I'm currently working on some training materials, and possibly another book as well to go a little bit more under the hood with I'm not going to say idiot's guide because, but the sort of step by step. This is how you get more tutorial, more training type material. There's more content.
What are these AI agents?
Agents. Good question, George, and you really should know. You're one of them. So again, I think with most of what happened in my journey into performance engineering and AI was, I guess, organic and sort of accidental in a way. So one thing led to another. The agent started off as a very focused use of AI for doing micro tasks in my workflow. I found I was switching context between a sort of chat, AI, ChatGPT, sort of chatbot window, and my work, and that works pretty well. And but it got me thinking, wouldn't it be nice if we could make that a little bit more efficient? And then I saw some quite interesting plugins that were already being developed for JMeter, where that was already possible. They sort of evolved from the work I was doing at the time, where I was already opening up the JMeter architecture and creating plugins for it for my day job, if you like. So the agent sort of evolved gradually over time to solve very specific problems in my workflow. And initially, they were running off my local machine. I'm touching right now, still here. So they were designed to be efficient and very focused. And that's a thread that sort of continued in most of my work using AI. So they took on personalities, which sort of happened. I guess it's something I naturally do. Just the way my brain works, I find it easier to create stories, I guess, and associate personalities. And also, yeah, I guess, I mean, they really do have, in a way, personalities in how things developed and how they worked or didn't work, and so there's some tension with the technical challenges and tension between the agents, because at one point one was doing more of one thing, the other was doing more of another thing, and then there was a bit of overlap, and it was like, how do we resolve? So it kind of played out very nicely into personalities for each of the agents having their own name, their own character, and their own areas of specialty, and then kind of fighting over sometimes over who does what and exactly how. And that to help me, I think, to make it more fun as well, to make it a little bit more relatable. But there's a theme that sort of is part of my work and throughout the book, which is that I find when I collaborate with AI, I get better results. So giving the agents, I guess, more treating them more as collaborators and teammates, I find actually helps get better results. So yeah, coming back to a touch of philosophy, I guess, there have been moments where I do wonder, where do you sort of cut off from processing and sort of code, manipulating data, thinking, intelligence, and self-awareness. So way beyond my pay grade, but fascinating, really, really fascinating. And working so heavily with AI, that I do find that different models have their own personalities. They do have, I mean, you could say, well, they're programmed that way. But learning how to work with their personalities, I found useful, and like I said, get better results. So I guess yeah. So the agents, come back to the question. So the agents were they grew organically, and they were an evolution from me basically starting to experiment with sort of off-the-shelf, sort of specialist agents I was creating, to really sort of wiring them into the workflow and make them even more specialized. So yeah, does that help, George? So
Do you have proof it works?
well, do I have proof it works? So that's quite a good question, and the honest answer is yes, but not as much proof as I would like. So the proof is in time and motion study. So one flow at a time, using my demo site. So I put myself through the test, and I, a user flow I'm quite familiar with. I developed the demo site, so I know exactly. I should know exactly how to correlate it, and yet, despite my experience and despite the fact that I was intimately familiar with this site, I still struggled a bit, and ended up taking me over 20 minutes, 25 minutes ish to manually correlate this relatively short user flow. And to be fair, maybe I hadn't correlated manually in a while, possibly that, being a bit rusty and old, and I've been, sort of relying on AI too much. You could argue that. But when I did same process with Load Magic, it took, I think, about 70 seconds that time. So yeah, the idea, with that time motion study, which is, it's not statistically meaningful sample, it's just one recording of me doing a thing, and then one instance of Load Magic doing it. But with that workflow, there was quite a big difference. And so what I found when I was doing manually, there were moments where I was doing the trial and error, and I was making sort of like human error mistakes where at one point I put the wrong type of extractor in, things like that. And I had to rewind a couple of times, and I had to sort of dig around and see the usual sort of thing, So yeah, then I played back Low Magic, and I was so relieved. And I thought, well, I don't want to do these things manually anymore. So anecdotal, I guess, but yeah, I did record the whole thing, took timings, and about 20, it's found about 20 times faster, just for that one part of the workflow. And there are other parts of the workflow, which, also should save time, like generating code from text that's very specific and very tailored to the tool, and performing QA, things like catching. So I think it's a combination of efficiency, but also consistency. Higher, sort of less less likely to less likelihood of human error. But yes, there isn't as much evidence as I would like. I think the really sort of true test would be taking it into a sort of end-to-end pipeline, integrating it in a sort of corporate environment. So and doing more of these sort of time and motion studies. So not just against my demo site, but maybe some real live sites. Unfortunately, most live sites have bot protection now. So anyway, let me know anyone out there who's got a site they would like to test it against, and I'd be really, really thrilled. So
what went wrong?
What went wrong? How long do we have? So I mean, a lot of things. So I was learning the hard way in terms of, I mean, I guess it's, maybe 3-4 main things I would do very differently. So one, I wouldn't use the tool that I chose to build it with. It's one of those things that like I said, happened accidentally. I happened to be working with JMeter at the time, and one thing sort of led to another. And it was never a plan. Okay, I'm gonna end up with this thing that's going to solve all these problems in the preparation layer and use AI to do that. It was more, there's this tiny little thing here, really easy and simple to solve, and then but then there's another one. And so what happened is a sort of organic process of many little problems being solved, which sort of combined to solve a bigger one. And so that approach, in hindsight, I would have done very differently. And in fact, I have, and I've gone back and sort of re-architected the whole thing to with a bigger picture view to make it a bit more organized. So that was one thing that I guess you could say went wrong. Is it happened organically. There was no real sort of deliberate plan as to where it was heading. It just sort of happened. Another thing that went wrong is choice of tools. So tool I started with is not very AI friendly. So if I'd have had that mission of how we're going to use AI to solve this problem, probably would have chosen a more AI native tool. And another thing that went wrong is I guess I had to learn the hard way how to implement stability and reliability, which hit me quite hard when I moved to AWS, which is how to put this, I don't find it very intuitive compared to other sort of more recent platforms that yeah, it's there's a lot of moving parts there, and it's quite easy. I do find it a bit like a maze. It's quite easy to get lost in it, and as the complexity of what I was trying to do, grew. Like I said, a lot of it was growing organically, so it did add. Yeah, so I think AWS itself is a little bit. Yeah, it was a learning curve. So I've worked very heavily in AWS, but that was more implementing frameworks within a containerized environment, and I was working more in the containerized environment space and in the pipeline. So yeah, so I guess that's one of the things that could have been better handled with I guess building in that stability, doing a bit more work upfront to stabilize the pipeline and the deployment process. So that's now working quite smoothly, and I sort of learned my lesson. So, and I guess, yeah, but more specifically, so the AI bit that went wrong was, I guess, it was quite a big jump. So when, because initially, like I was saying earlier about the agents, I designed the agents to be very focused and very specialized, and that always worked quite well. And the AI part of it was, always, I guess, an easy part of the chain, and it was more, getting the other parts of the workflow, which are non-AI, sort of working. That was the real challenge. And I think where it got messy was when. I guess a natural evolution with where AI is going is that the models are getting more and more powerful, and I could see already there was some plugins that were moving in that direction to basically enable the AI to just what I would call to have God mode, in the sense that the agent could manipulate the test plan in more or less any way it wanted. So giving it more power, more autonomy, was in a way a sort of natural move that we came to the end of the pipeline. We've tried all the usual things in our more narrow, focused, specialized way in our work, in our sort of pre-wired workflow, but there might still be scenarios where that hasn't been enough to fix the problem. So yeah, that's where things got messy when we started to give George, God mode, if you like. So what I found was if we went all out and gave frontier model, full context, full tools and powers, that will work okay. The only thing with that is slow and not very efficient. So the challenge was, how do we, make it more efficient so that we can use less tokens and sort of less expensive models and models that are faster. So it was an efficiency problem, and also making it a little bit more predictable. So if you think that there's like maybe a spectrum of intelligence when you're trying to do solve a problem with technology these days, and so at one end we've got what I just described. You've got your sort of frontier model, with fully enabled powers to do tool usage and multiple turns and do a sort of agentic investigation or fix. So and then at the very other far end you've got some very deterministic code. So then you might have some slightly more intelligent code, maybe algorithms, sort of pseudo AI if you like, and then you might have very focused AI, which is where Load Magic started with our agents, and then you have what I just described as God mode. So if you think about those different sort of tiers of intelligence that you're using to solve problems, there is a trade-off. Right? So at the more deterministic end, it's cheaper, it's faster, and more predictable. So it does make sense to keep it to the cheaper, faster, more efficient end as much as you can, and you get more predictable results. But there is a trade-off because obviously you have less power, and there are there's less sort of outcomes that can be dealt with. The more the further down you go towards the efficiency end. So that's sort of really, I guess, been trying to design with Load Magic and the solutions, the sort of AI solutions I've been working on is trying to get that balance so that we're using the right level of intelligence for the right task to keep things as efficient as possible. But yeah, so going back to what went wrong with the God mode. It's a lot of trial and error, and I found that there's things that are not immediately obvious in the sort of field manuals, if you like. When you're trying, different models, they can have subtle behavior differences, which you almost sort of have to sort of figure out as you're going on. So we ended up developing some tests to assess their behavior, to see how they handled using tools. Is it as and so forth. So yeah, that once I sort of got my head around the potential pitfalls, that helped and came and ended up moving some of that logic a little bit to making some of it a little bit more deterministic, and I went through different iterations of having triage, so using sort of more narrow, more efficient models to help with this, sort of routing decisions, if you like, and also using the smart code as well to try and detect. I guess you could call it a bit like giving agents emotions. If you think about what an emotion is evolutionary for biologicals, feels weird to describe myself as that. I'm a biological, but yeah, if you think about what emotion is, it's a shortcut. So you don't have to process a lot of information. You feel fear and you run. Your brain doesn't have to sort of fully process. There's that thing over there. There's that, and all these different colors and sounds and whatever, and you get lost, analyzing the situation. You just feel fear, and instantly it shortcuts your reaction, and that saves you from being eaten by the lion or whatever. So yeah, similar sort of thing with what we try to implement with the agents. So it might be senior frontier model, but before it goes to senior frontier model, there might be some sort of knee-jerk reactions that we can, sort of shortcut using some of the more efficient layers of intelligence. And then, okay, yeah, we that shortcut maybe didn't work, so okay, we can then escalate. So yeah, that was quite a lot of learning, and it did get lost, trying out quite a few different approaches, and yeah, that's so some of that learning is in the book. So treat it as a manual maybe for what not to do, if you like, as well as hopefully some guidance as to what does work or what did work in the end. So
who is this book for?
Who's it for? I guess anyone who's interested in using AI to solve real world engineering type problems, sort of workflows. Obviously, very specifically here, performance engineering, performance testing. So right now, a lot of what was drawn out in the book was related to the preparation layer of performance engineering, performance testing. But I think a lot of what was learned could be applied to different parts. And like I said, I think I will be creating more content, particularly related to the analysis layer. So yeah, it's not a beginner's guide to JMeter or or performance engineering. It's more sort of lessons learned, if you like, in relation to how AI could be used to solve a particular problem or set of problems in the performance testing, performance engineering workflow. So if you enjoyed listening to this, and if you're curious to find out more, I'm going to put the link below. So feel free, please do have a look, and I'd love to get your feedback and comments. That would be great. So thanks very much for listening, and take care. enjoy your your journey into AI and performance engineering, or either one of those. Take care. Bye.
This was George and David at loadmagic.ai. Thanks for watching.